Hassan had been driving taxis in New York City for 17 years, but he'd never had a passenger quite like the one he picked up outside Madison Square Garden at 11:43 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday in October. The woman who slid into his back seat was wearing what appeared to be a dress made entirely of mirrors, each shard catching and reflecting the neon lights of the city. But it was her hair that made him do a double-take in the rearview mirror. A cascade of brilliant turquoise that seemed to glow from within, like bioluminescent algae in a midnight ocean. "The peninsula, please," she said, her voice surprisingly soft for someone dressed like a human disco ball. "And step on it." Hassan nodded, pulling away from the curb. He'd recognized her immediately. Of course, Lady Gaga was hardly someone you could mistake for anyone else. But in 17 years of driving, he'd learned that celebrities preferred drivers who acted like they were just another fare. Besides, he had other things on his mind tonight. His daughter Amira's 10th birthday was coming up, and she'd been begging for tickets to Gaga's upcoming concert at Radio City Music Hall. The shows had sold out in minutes, and the resale prices were more than his weekly earnings. He'd promised Amira he'd figure something out, but so far, his only plan was to pick up extra night shifts to save up for the astronomical ticket prices. The rain was getting heavier, drumming against the roof of the taxi like impatient fingers. In the back seat, Lady Gaga was typing furiously on her phone, the blue light from the screen competing with her supernatural hair. Hassan caught fragments of a heated conversation she was having with someone. No, the pyrotechnics weren't too much, and the dress worked exactly as planned, and I don't care what the fire marshal says. They were about halfway to the hotel when Hassan heard a sharp intake of breath from the back seat, followed by urgent rustling. "Can you pull over?" Gaga asked, her voice tight with urgency. "I think I'm going to be sick." Hassan smoothly guided the taxi to the curb, grateful for the late hour and relatively empty streets. His passenger practically flew out of the car, ducking into the shelter of a closed flower shop's awning. He watched in the side mirror as she bent over, hands on her knees, taking deep breaths. The mirror dress caught the streetlights, sending patterns dancing across the wet sidewalk. After a few minutes, she straightened up and walked back to the car, looking slightly pale but composed. "I'm so sorry about that," she said as she slid back in. "The adrenaline crash after shows sometimes hits me hard." "No problem at all," Hassan assured her. "Are you okay to continue?" "Yes, please. I just need to lie down in a real bed." The rest of the ride passed in silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of the windshield wipers. When they pulled up to the peninsula, Lady Gaga handed him her credit card and a generous tip. She seemed distracted, already halfway out of the car before the transaction was complete. It wasn't until he'd driven 2 blocks away that Hassan noticed it in his rearview mirror. A splash of brilliant turquoise in the back seat that definitely hadn't been there at the start of his shift. He pulled over and turned around to look properly. There, perfectly arranged across his back seat as if it were still attached to a head, was Lady Gaga's wig. Hassan reached back and gingerly picked it up. It was surprisingly heavy, the hair silky and cool to the touch, like touching a mermaid's tail, or at least how he imagined a mermaid's tail would feel. He should turn around and return it, he thought. But something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the memory of Amira's disappointed face when he told her the concert tickets were sold out. Maybe it was the way the wig seemed to pulse with an inner light, like it was alive. He placed the wig carefully on the passenger seat, where it cast an ethereal blue glow across his dashboard. His next fare would certainly have questions about his unusual companion, but Hassan was already composing a message in his head to Lady Gaga's people. Perhaps this strange twist of fate could lead to something interesting. What he didn't know then was just how interesting things were about to become, or that this turquoise wig would set in motion a chain of events that would change not only his life but the lives of everyone in his family. And it all started because a pop star got carsick on a rainy Tuesday night in New York City. The wig sat innocently on his passenger seat, its strands shifting slightly in the air, conditioning like tentacles underwater, while Hassan pulled away from the curb and back into the endless flow of New York traffic. He had no way of knowing that in less than 24 hours, this very wig would be at the center of a social media storm, a family crisis, and possibly the strangest series of coincidences in his 17 years of driving a taxi in New York City. Hassan's apartment in Queens was never completely quiet, even at 3 in the morning. The radiator clicked and hissed like a sleeping dragon, The upstairs neighbor's cat conducted its nightly marathon across creaking floorboards, and somewhere in the building, a baby was practicing its vocal range. But tonight, these familiar sounds were overshadowed by his children's whispered argument outside his bedroom door. "You wake him up." "No, you do it." "I'm not touching that thing, it's creepy." "Don't be such a baby, Malik." Hassan smiled despite his exhaustion. He'd carefully placed Lady Gaga's wig on the kitchen table when he got home, planning to deal with it in the morning. But of course his children, early risers thanks to their mother's strict schedule, had discovered it first. "I can hear you both," he called out, and the door creaked open to reveal Amira and her younger brother Malik still in their pajamas. Malik was hiding slightly behind his sister, eyeing the turquoise wig that Amira was holding at arm's length. "Baba," Amira said, her voice a mixture of accusation and awe, "why is there a mermaid's head on our kitchen table?" Hassan sat up, rubbing his eyes. "It's not a mermaid's head, sweetheart. It's a wig that belongs to Lady Gaga." The effect of these words was immediate and explosive. Amira dropped the wig with a shriek of delight, while Malik jumped backward as if it might bite him. "Lady Gaga?" Amira screamed, her voice reaching a pitch that probably had dogs in the next burrow covering their ears. "The Lady Gaga? The one I've been begging to see in concert? That Lady Gaga?" "Inside voice Habibti," Hassan reminded her, though he couldn't help grinning at her excitement. "Yes, that Lady Gaga. She left it in my taxi last night." "We have to return it," Malik said sensibly, though he still wouldn't come closer than 3 feet to the wig. "Famous people probably have special wig-finding services or something." "Or," Amira said, her eyes sparkling with the kind of calculation that reminded Hassan eerily of her mother, "we could keep it as collateral." "Collateral for what?" Hassan asked, though he had a sinking feeling he knew where this was going. "Concert tickets," Amira declared triumphantly. "We'll tell her we found her wig and we'll return it if she gives us tickets to her show." "That's called blackmail," Malik pointed out. "Ms. Rodriguez taught us about it in social studies." "It's illegal." "It's not blackmail," Amira protested. "It's negotiation." Hassan was about to explain the fine line between negotiation and extortion to his daughter when his phone buzzed. He'd sent a carefully worded message to Lady Gaga's management team through her official website before going to bed, explaining about the wig and asking how to return it. Now, looking at his screen, he saw a direct message from what appeared to be Lady Gaga's verified Instagram account. The message read, "I hear you found my runaway mermaid. My children fans are telling me your taxi's gone viral. Check Twitter. #mermaidtaxi is trending. Would love to chat about getting my aquatic friend back. P.S. Is it true your daughter's a little monster? Fish crown." Hassan's hand shook slightly as he opened Twitter. Sure enough, a blurry photo of his taxi was spreading across the internet like wildfire. One of his passengers from last night must have noticed the ethereal blue glow from the wig and snapped a picture. The tweets ranged from hilarious to bizarre. "NYC taxi driver out here with some serious undersea mood lighting. #mermaidtaxi. Y'all, that's definitely Lady Gaga's wig from the concert. I'd know that turquoise anywhere. #mermaidtaxi. Plot twist. Actual mermaid taking a cab home after a rough night out. #mermaidtaxi. The sound of the apartment's front door opening made them all jump. "Why is everyone awake at this hour?" called a familiar voice. "And why is Twitter telling me there's a mermaid in my husband's taxi?" Malik ran to the door. "Mama!" Baba found Lady Gaga's hair. Nadia appeared in the bedroom doorway, still in her nurse's scrubs from the night shift, looking both exhausted and amused. Her eyes went from the wig to Hassan to their excited children, and she shook her head slowly. "Habibi," she said to Hassan, "only you could turn a regular night shift into an international incident." Before Hassan could defend himself, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "Hi Hassan, Gaga here. About that wig, I have a proposition for you. But first, you should know that the blue dye is experimental and slightly radioactive." "Just kidding. Winking face, but seriously, call me. We need to talk about your daughter's birthday." Hassan stared at his phone, then at his family, then at the wig that had somehow turned his ordinary life into a surreal adventure. Amira was already composing what looked like an elaborate Instagram post. Malik was Googling how to tell if something is really radioactive, and Nadia was trying not to laugh while simultaneously attempting to look disapproving. The radiator clicked, the neighbor's cat continued its marathon, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, the normal symphony of New York City at dawn. But now these familiar sounds were accompanied by the gentle hum of viral fame, the ping of social media notifications, and the impossible possibility that maybe, just maybe, his daughter's birthday wish wasn't so impossible after all. The turquoise wig sat in the center of it all, its strands catching the morning light, looking less like a mermaid's head now and more like a key to an adventure that was only just beginning.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.
By noon, the hallway outside Hassan's apartment had become an impromptu media circus. 3 local news crews had somehow tracked down his address, and a steady stream of social media influencers kept showing up, all hoping to get a glimpse of the now famous #mermaid taxi wig. Mrs. Petrova from next door had appointed herself unofficial security guard, wielding her Russian accent and formidable umbrella to keep the more persistent photographers at bay. No pictures, she barked at a young man with a professional camera. This is residential building, not aquarium. Mermaid is sleeping. Inside the apartment, Hassan sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone in disbelief. Lady Gaga's proposition had been unexpected. Let me get this straight, Nadia said, pacing the small kitchen. She wants to do what? She wants to use our taxi and the wig for her next music video, Hassan repeated. She says the whole #mermaid taxi thing has given her an idea for a new song. Something about magical taxi rides and transformations. She wants me to play myself. And Amira? Nadia pressed, though she already knew the answer. Their daughter had been bouncing off the walls since the phone call. She wants Amira to be in it too. As the daughter who discovers that her ordinary taxi-driving father has been secretly ferrying magical creatures around New York City, Hassan couldn't help smiling at the thought. The wig would be just one of many lost items from supernatural passengers. I told you it was magical. Amira shouted from her room, where she'd been ordered to stay until they made a decision. They could hear her practicing what she called her future Grammy acceptance speech. Malik, who had been unusually quiet, looked up from his tablet. Baba? You might want to see this. He turned the screen around to show them a new Twitter thread that was going viral. Someone had done a deep dive into Hassan's taxi records and discovered a pattern of unusual passengers over the years. A man in a full Victorian costume who'd disappeared before paying his fare, a woman whose pet cat seemed to be speaking French. A group of businessmen with suspicious pointed ears who'd paid in what looked like solid gold coins. But those were just... Hassan trailed off, remembering those strange encounters he dismissed as late-night exhaustion or tricks of the light. The Victorian ghost who'd thanked him so politely before vanishing into mist. The cat who'd definitely been conjugating French verbs. The elven investment bankers who'd tip him in elvish currency, which he'd later discovered was actually ancient Celtic gold in a museum evaluation. Just what, Habibi? Nadia asked, raising an eyebrow. Before Hassan could answer, their buzzer rang. Through the intercom came a familiar voice. Hey, it's Gaga. I brought coffee and some ideas for the video. Also, the wig is getting homesick, it misses my other wigs. They're a very close-knit family. Nadia pressed the intercom button. 5th floor. Mrs. Petrova will escort you. Mind the umbrella. Minutes later, Lady Gaga swept into their apartment, somehow making even jeans and a baseball cap look avant-garde. She was carrying a tray of coffee cups in one hand and a thick notebook in the other. Sorry about the media circus, she said, setting everything down. But wait until you hear what I'm planning. Hassan, your taxi isn't just going to be in a music video. It's going to be the star of its own supernatural rideshare service. She opened the notebook, revealing storyboards, costume sketches, and what looked like a map of New York City with glowing ley lines running through it. See, I've been thinking. What if there's a whole hidden network of magical taxi drivers in New York? People who help supernatural creatures get around the city without being noticed by regular humans? And what if Hassan has been part of it all along without realizing it? Hassan looked at Nadia, who was trying to hide a smile. He looked at Malik, who had finally abandoned his skepticism and was peering at the storyboards with interest. He thought about all those strange late-night fares that he'd convinced himself he'd imagined. And he thought about Amira, who'd always insisted there was magic in the city if you just knew where to look. There's just one problem, he said slowly. I have a regular job. I can't just... "Oh, that's taken care of," Lady Gaga waved her hand dismissively. "I bought your taxi medallion this morning. You now work exclusively for Supernatural Ride Services LLC. The pay is better, the hours are flexible, and the health insurance covers everything, including accidental dragon burns and unicorn-related injuries." From Amira's room came a squeal of pure joy, followed by a thud that suggested she'd either fainted or was practicing her dramatic falls for the video. "But what about the wig?" Malik asked, practical as always. "Won't people be disappointed when they find out it was just a publicity stunt?" Lady Gaga smiled mysteriously. "Who says it was just a publicity stunt?" She reached for the wig, which had been sitting quietly on the kitchen counter. The moment her fingers touched it, the turquoise strands began to ripple and glow, and for a split second, so quickly Hassan thought he might have imagined it, it seemed to wink at him. The radiator chose that moment to release a particularly loud hiss, making everyone jump. Outside, they could hear Mrs. Petrova engaged in what sounded like an epic battle with the paparazzi, her umbrella presumably claiming new victims. "So," Lady Gaga said, pulling out a contract that seemed to be written in slightly glowing ink, "what do you say? Ready to officially join the supernatural underground of New York City?" Hassan looked at his family. Nadia nodded encouragingly. Malik gave him a thumbs up. From her room, Amira shouted, "Say yes or I'm running away to join the circus." He picked up the pin Lady Gaga offered him. Was it his imagination, or was it made from a phoenix feather? And took a deep breath. Sometimes he realized the most magical rides start with a single signature. The first day of filming started at midnight, which Hassan learned was the preferred working hours for most supernatural beings. His taxi had undergone a subtle transformation. The regular yellow paint now had an iridescent quality that only showed up under certain types of moonlight. And the meter could now calculate fares in everything from mortal dollars to dragon's gold to fairy dust. "Remember," Lady Gaga said, adjusting her newly returned wig, which seemed particularly perky after being reunited with its family, "we're shooting the music video. But we're also documenting your actual first night as an official supernatural taxi driver. Just act natural." "Natural," Hassan repeated weakly, watching as a group of makeup artists applied subtle prosthetics to Amira's ears to make them slightly pointed. His daughter had been cast as a half-elf discovering her heritage, which explained a lot about her uncanny ability to hear him sneaking cookies at midnight. Malik, who had surprised everyone by revealing a talent for organization, was serving as a production assistant. He had a clipboard and a headset and was currently arguing with what appeared to be an invisible goblin about union rules for supernatural extras. "You can't just pay them in shiny buttons," Hassan heard him say firmly. SAG-AFTRA guidelines clearly state, "No, I don't care if they're really shiny buttons." Nadia had taken the whole thing remarkably in stride. When Hassan had expressed surprise at her calm acceptance of the supernatural world, she'd given him a look. "Habibi, I'm an ER nurse in New York City. Last week I treated a man who swore he was allergic to gravity. This is not the strangest thing I've seen." The first scene they shot was simple enough. Hassan picking up a group of vampires who needed to get to their eternal rest before sunrise. The challenge was that real vampires don't show up on film, so they had to use regular actors, which offended the actual vampires who'd shown up to watch the shoot. "That's not how we dress at all," complained one vampire in an impeccable modern suit. "We stopped wearing capes in the 1800s. So tacky." Lady Gaga, who was directing as well as appearing in the video, took their criticism in stride. "What if we did a split screen? Show the Hollywood version on one side and the real vampires on the other?" "Oh wait." The night got progressively more interesting. They filmed a scene where Hassan helped a lost phoenix navigate to her flaming perch atop the Chrysler Building. Then there was the Mermaid delegation heading to a secret underwater UN session. They tipped incredibly well but left the seats a bit damp. A troupe of theater ghosts needed a ride to their Broadway haunting gig and insisted on practicing their musical numbers the whole way. The centerpiece of the video was, of course, the story of the turquoise wig. They recreated the night Hassan had first picked up Lady Gaga, but this time showing what had really happened. The wig hadn't been left behind accidentally, it had chosen Hassan's taxi specifically, recognizing him as a potential member of the supernatural transport network. "Wigs have excellent judgment of character," Lady Gaga explained during a break between scenes. She was sharing a thermos of something that smelled like stardust with Mrs. Petrova, who had been revealed as a retired Baba Yaga and was now serving as the production's security consultant. Especially enchanted ones. Around 4 a.m., they filmed what Hassan considered the most surreal scene of all, Amira's discovery of her half-elven heritage. In the scene, she found a childhood photo album that showed her ears becoming gradually less pointed as glamour magic had hidden her true nature. The actual photos were provided by Nadia, who sheepishly admitted she'd been maintaining the glamour for years. "I thought it would be easier for you to grow up seeming fully human," she explained to a delighted Amira. "But I guess you can't hide who you really are forever." "Is that why I can't do math?" Malik asked hopefully. "No, that's just because you don't practice enough," Nadia replied firmly. As the sky began to lighten, they prepared to film the final scene. Hassan's taxi was parked at the intersection of two major ley lines in Central Park. The camera crew, a mix of human professionals and what appeared to be sentient ball lightning with really good eye for composition, got into position. Lady Gaga, her wig now glowing with an inner light that rivaled the approaching dawn, turned to Hassan. "Ready for your close-up?" Hassan looked around at his family, Amira, proudly touching her pointed ears, Malik, efficiently organizing supernatural beings like he'd been doing it all his life, Nadia, chatting with a group of dryads about the best treatment for bark rash. Then he looked at his taxi, which had been his faithful companion through 17 years of ordinary life, and was now about to become something extraordinary. "Ready," he said, and was surprised to find that he meant it. What happened next would become the stuff of legend in both the human and supernatural communities. But that's a story for the final part of our tale. The music video for Midnight Ride, The Mermaid Taxi, premiered 3 months after that magical night of filming. In the human world, it was an instant hit, breaking streaming records and spawning countless TikTok challenges. Fans tried to recreate the ethereal glow of Hassan's taxi using everything from LED strips to glow sticks, though none quite managed to capture the authentic shimmer of real ley line energy. But in the supernatural world, the video served a different purpose entirely. It was, as Lady Gaga had planned all along, a very public coming-out party for New York City's magical underground transportation network. No longer did supernatural beings have to rely on inefficient portals or risky teleportation spells to get around the city. Now they had Hassan, and as it turned out, quite a few other specially chosen drivers who'd been quietly serving the magical community for years. "It's like Uber, but for unicorns," Malik explained to his friends at school, who thought he was just making up stories until the day a griffin landed in the playground to deliver his forgotten lunchbox. After that, he became the most popular kid in 5th grade. Amira, meanwhile, had thrown herself into both her newfound elven heritage and her budding entertainment career. The video had led to a recurring role on a supernatural children's show called Half Magic High, where she played a teenage half-elf navigating both human and magical middle school. Her pointed ears became a trend, inspiring a whole line of cosmetic ear modifications among human teenagers. "But mine are real," she'd say with a touch of pride, before demonstrating her ability to hear conversations 3 blocks away, a skill that drove her brother crazy and proved surprisingly useful for her father's taxi business. Nadia had finally been able to open the specialty medical practice she'd always dreamed of, treating both human and supernatural patients. Her experience as an ER nurse combined with her own magical background made her uniquely qualified to handle everything from dragonpox to unicorn horn sprains. She still maintained that nothing surprised her, even when treating a hypochondriac phoenix convinced it had lost its ability to rise from the ashes, just allergies, she diagnosed. Mrs. Petrova had parlayed her security work during the video shoot into a thriving consulting business, teaching magical self-defense to celebrity familiars and supernatural social media influencers. Her umbrella, it turned out, had been a powerful magical artifact all along. "In old country," she'd say, "we know that best weapons are ones nobody suspects." As for Hassan, he found that being a supernatural taxi driver suited him perfectly. His natural calm and unflappable demeanor made him ideal for handling even the most unusual situations. Whether it was helping a nervous young werewolf get to their first full moon ceremony, or making sure a group of pixies didn't get overcharged just because they wanted to pay in dewdrops, he treated every fare with the same respectful professionalism he'd always shown. The turquoise wig made occasional guest appearances in his taxi, usually when Lady Gaga was in town for special events. It had developed quite a fan following of its own, with several conspiracy theories about its true nature. Some claimed it was a transformed sea witch. Others insisted it was a piece of sentient coral from Atlantis. The wig never confirmed or denied any of these theories, but it did seem to smirk whenever the rumors were mentioned. 1 year to the day after the famous taxi ride that started it all, Hassan picked up a special group of passengers, his own family, along with Lady Gaga and the now famous wig. They were heading to Radio City Music Hall for the premiere of Supernatural Ride Services. The documentary, a behind-the-scenes look at New York's magical transportation network. As they drove through the city, Hassan couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The streets were the same, but now he could see the ley lines glowing beneath the asphalt, the hidden doorways to fairy markets in the sides of buildings, the rooftop gardens where dragons sunned themselves disguised as satellite dishes. "Penny for your thoughts?" Lady Gaga asked, her wig glowing contentedly in the back seat. "I was just thinking," Hassan said, "about how sometimes the most magical thing isn't the magic itself. It's what it shows us about who we already were." Amira rolled her eyes in typical teenage fashion, though her pointed ears twitched appreciatively. "Baba, you're getting philosophical again." "He's right though," Nadia said, squeezing her husband's hand. "The magic didn't change us. It just helped us see ourselves more clearly. Plus," Malik added practically, "it made our family story way cooler than 'my dad's a regular taxi driver.'" As they pulled up to Radio City Music Hall, where a mixed crowd of humans and supernatural beings awaited them, Hassan's taxi meter made the special chiming sound that indicated they were crossing a major ley line. The sound always reminded him of that first night, when a turquoise wig had decided to play matchmaker between a regular taxi driver and the magical world that had been there all along. Lady Gaga's wig gave a final cheerful glow as they stepped out onto the red carpet. Above them, a group of dragons disguised as helicopters circled the building, their scales reflecting the city lights. A young phoenix was singing warm-up scales somewhere nearby, actual scales of musical fire floating through the air. And in the middle of it all was Hassan's taxi, no longer just a yellow cab, but a bridge between two worlds. "Ready?" Nadia asked, as cameras flashed and magical reporters on floating carpets positioned themselves for better angles. Hassan looked at his family, his half-elven daughter, his practically minded son, his magical healer wife, and at the life they'd built together, both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. He thought about all the rides ahead of him, all the stories yet to unfold in the back seat of his taxi. "Ready," he said, and stepped forward into the next chapter of their magical life, where the only thing more extraordinary than the magic itself was the love that had made it all possible. And somewhere in the night sky above New York, a shooting star winked. Or perhaps it was just a dragon with something in its eye.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.